So when it comes out.
All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm recording another quick hit episode, which I like to call micro interviews. It's kind of a way for me to introduce myself and listeners to be introduced to new up and coming local artists. And I found that this is a cool way to kind of expand my horizons on the local music scene, and also to just find out who's out there that is maybe not someone who has enough of a catalog yet to devote to a full 45-minute long episode, but is doing interesting stuff and deserves some exposure. So I think the best way to start this off is if you want to just introduce yourself and just give a little bit of background about where you're coming from musically.
Yeah, my name is Carlo Capobianco, and I'm a pop artist from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and grew up here. Grew up in the North End.
Okay.
And started working on music when I was young. Never really knew I was working on music until I actually got into the studio, and then I actually got it out. But yeah, I've been working with Adam Furr of Yes We Mystic and just producing some really good tunes, and my debut just came out, so I'm really happy about that.
Cool. And like you said, you're a pop artist, and I mean, from listening to your debut single, for sure, pop is very, very prominent there. What would you say are some of your influences? If someone hasn't heard you before, who would you sort of point them in the direction of as someone that might be sonically similar?
Well, I definitely like to take a lot of influences from new wave, and I think the 80s in general is, ever since I was a kid, the 80s has always been the synths, the drums, the styling, the imaging is all something that I love from the 80s. So my main inspiration is definitely that era. But in terms of artists, I'd say if I were to really put it into a box, I would say Lana Del Rey. If
Okay.
you like Lana Del Rey, you might like my stuff.
Okay.
Tame Impala, any pop artist, really. I just love making pop music. This song is kind of low key, but the rest of my music will be much more in your face.
Okay.
So yeah, I think my main inspiration though would be Madonna. I have a whole poster of Madonna up there. So
So that, I mean, you're talking pop, not pop, pop hyphenated with something else. You're full on big hooks, big synths, in this case, pop music.
I am a fan of cut, industry cut. The person went into the studio and their only reason in being in that studio is to make a pop hit, just full pop.
What I'm assuming that if you were around at all in the 80s, it wouldn't have been for very long, but what is it about that era that obviously predates you that appeals so much? I mean, because I mean, I think that a lot of it seems like every few decades a past decade comes back in a big way and influences what's going on currently. And I mean, what is it about the 80s that you think kind of that you can connect to as a musician? Because I think a lot of people in the 80s, now almost want to forget some of that stuff because there's sort of a datedness to it, right? But what is it for a young person now looking back at that stuff that comes before you? What connection do you find with it?
I think definitely just in terms of music, the 80s had a lot of texture, and everything was recorded on tape. So I mean, everything is so, if you listen with a good pair of headphones, you can really hear every single texture and every single instrument, and everything is so fun and in your face, and these men wearing makeup and crazy dance sequences and Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, everything was just no rules back then. And I think after the 90s, we kind of went to a place where we were so in such a box that no one, even Adam Levine had is that the same person? that Adam Lambert?
That was the American Idol guy, right?
Yeah, Adam Lambert. I mean, Adam Lambert even had trouble like getting, like a mainstream hit because of his image.
Sure.
I think
sure.
that's changing a little now, but it's so weird. I think it's so weird how it just like went backwards because everything was so free in the 80s. And then, so yeah, I just love the differences in culture and images and, styles of the 80s,
Yeah.
especially instrumentals and production, and the personalities, of course.
Does that sort of color and vibrancy that was big in the 80s? I know what you mean too. I mean, you have all these like big dance sequences and neon everywhere and everything, and then suddenly,
Yeah.
yeah, things got darker and more kind of smaller almost. Does that visual element of it and just the way it's presented, is that something that you're hoping to bring as far as playing live as well?
I think so. For sure. I definitely want my live shows to be a spectacle. And I really want to dance. I want to have, it's a lot of work and a lot of money. But
true.
but I think it can happen. And I've seen a few artists do the same thing. But from what I've been looking at in the music scene here in Winnipeg, I don't think that anyone's tried to go, full, unless they've, unless you're Olivia Lunny or something, who's
right.
has a large contract with a large record label who has the funding to do that. Or the closest I've seen is Begonia. And
I was going to say that.
She's done like a really great job at harnessing that missing spot in our Winnipeg music scene. And I would like to add on to that, I really want to have, a spectacle and not just, a boring show that is at like the beginning of a concert that no one watches.
Well, it's got to be hard though, right? It is starting where you're starting and wanting to do that, because I mean, like you said, some people who have a contract and they have an established fan base and everything, they can easily, well, not easily, but it's much easier for them to put on something like that because they have the resources and people know what to expect. If you're playing a show at a local venue, people might not be, the infrastructure might not be there, right, to put on some kind of a big pop extravaganza. So
yeah,
do you think your songs work in a stripped down way as well? Like, can you take these songs that are meant to be heard in a big sort of pop setting and play them in a more subdued way that you may need to do starting out?
Yeah, of course. Like I work with really, many of my songs are written by Max Hamilton, which is a really great local artist of Joko T. I have a lot of really talented musicians around me and a lot of people that understand like textures and good production, but also like how, the nuances of like actually writing like a technically good pop song, which is what I'm looking for. Like I want there to be like a science behind the song. So absolutely, like if I had to do a throwback, not a throwback, but if I had to do like a down to the basics, like guitar show, then I mean the shows are the songs are definitely able to do that. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I was going at. Yeah, the strength of the song is there, I guess, right? That you don't need to.
Yeah.
It can be presented in either format. That's cool. So if people are hearing about you for the first time on this show, what's the best way for them to track down what you're doing? I know you have the single out. I'm sure it's available on whatever platforms people are using. There's 6,000 of them these days. But what's the best way to sort of keep in touch with what you're up to and find out about upcoming releases, upcoming shows, things like
that? I tried to open a website, but I got too lazy. So I mean, you can just follow my Instagram. I do. It's easy there.
Okay. Well, it's honest at least, right? With the lazy website. Yeah. And the single, what is the name of the single? I don't think we actually talked about that specifically yet.
Call You Sometime.
Cool. And that's out already, so people can check that out wherever they get their music, and you can hear it right away here on the podcast. All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.